Hello, my name is Bill, and I realise now that this is going to be a long-ass video. You saw the title right, my book was an accidental bestseller, and now there's a TV show in the works, and I thought I would make a video because I've had lots of questions asking how this happened, and honestly, I don't know, but I'm going to tell you my story. Before we start, I know this is a very, very privileged position to be in. My story is not the norm. It is very, very strange. I don't think you could probably replicate it, but nevertheless, I'm so grateful and I'm so excited to tell you the whole story about how this came to be. If you've never seen me before, my name is Billwood. I am the author of Let's Split It Up. This book originally came out last September 26th in the UK. It went on to be an instant bestseller. It did really, really well. It then became the fastest selling young adult YA debut in the UK in 2024, so many words. And then earlier this year, we announced a TV show series. Oh my gosh, it's still crazy to say. Now, my story happened so fast. Getting my deal, everything, it was like fast-tracked. So I'm not gonna bore you with all of this rambling before, but yeah, I think we should just get into the story. Also, I don't need to hold the microphone, but it feels weird not having something in my hands. So this story actually begins all the way back in 2021. It was like, it wasn't peak COVID, but we were still feeling the after effects. At the time, I was in university, I was at the tail end of my first year. And the story actually begins on the first day I ever wrote any of the book that went on to become this book. It was June something 2021 because I just rewatched the Scooby-Doo live action movie, the classic that we all love. I've watched it so many times, and on that fruitful day I was rewatching it with my little brother, who's quite a bit younger than me. And as it finished, I just remember thinking, oh, I wish this was like a little bit older. And then it got me thinking, I was like, Scooby-Doo kind of is like horror, right? And then since then, I've always said that like Scooby-Doo kids become Scream adults, and I really stand by that. I think it's just the truth. That night, I actually wrote a couple of, like, I can't even remember how much I wrote, but I started writing the story that went on to be Let's Split Up. Now, that story changed a lot through the drafting process. It took me a very long time to get through it. At university, I studied film and screenwriting, and I took on all the horror modules I could. So actually, a lot of like scenes that I wrote for horror short films actually ended up making it into the book. And if you've read the book, there are some particular scenes which are like, in my opinion, very cinematic, especially one with Cam, one of the main characters. If you know, you know. I think you'll know which one I'm talking about. That scene was actually a scene from my short film that I wrote in university. I nearly said college. No, college for Americans, but it's uni here. The dates are a bit blurry for me now, but that draft, the first draft, was probably late 2021. I finally got a draft out, and I don't know what it was with it, but it didn't feel right. You know, you just have a feeling sometimes. So I actually shelved it for a bit, and I finished writing a fantasy I self-published for a bit, which those books are not available anymore. I don't think they really represent where I am as a writer. I definitely released them too soon, but there's a reason for that, because also in June 2021, so when I first started writing this book, I started posting on TikTok. I'd been on TikTok during COVID, but it was just as a viewer, and then I kind of fell into Book Talk when that was kind of really blowing up. And it wasn't until June in 2021 where I first posted a video, and it was literally just me. I just wanted a place to talk about the books I was reading, because I feel like lots of people with COVID got back into reading, and I was the same case, and subsequently fell back in love with writing. I did actually gain quite a few followers quite quickly. I remember hitting 1,000 followers within like a couple months, which was amazing to me. I'd started YouTube a couple times in the past, and I kind of gave up. I did some reaction-y videos back in 2019, but it was like music stuff because I also play the piano, I sing a bit, but I just kind of fell out of love with that. But now I was talking on the internet and posting reviews of books, and I fell in love with it, man. I just thought it was so fun. I've never really had many friends who read. Like, the only people I know who read are like my mom and my nan and granddad, and at the time they weren't really reading the same books as me, so it was just like a really fun outlet. Eventually, as I got more comfortable, I started posting about some like writing I'd done and like a book that I'd written, and it was a fantasy book that I'd written, which I ended up self-publishing the year after, because the first ever video I posted about it kind of blew up. It got like 1 million views, it got me 10,000 followers in less than a week. It was wild, and that's why I say that I don't feel like those books really represent me, because they were just so rushed, and I just kind of fell into like this demand because there was just so many people hyping up the book, you know. I finally got a draft of Let's Split Up that I liked. It was still really, really rough, but I liked it, and I just kept working at it because Let's Split Up is heavily inspired by Scream, Scooby-Doo, like 90s horror, these things that I really grew up on. I still love today, like my hyperfixations, and it was kind of the book of my heart, so I never gave up on it. And when I finally got it right, it just felt special to me. It was still rough, don't get me wrong, it was still not a great book, but the bones were there, you know. So towards the end of 2023, I got to the point where I felt a bit more comfortable to post online. Now at this time I knew I didn't want to self-publish again, or not yet again, because I just wanted to try the traditional publishing space. So I had every single intention of querying, and this is when the story gets really, really strange and not normal. At this time, I'd grown my follower base to over 100,000 followers. I had posted consistently every single day for 3 years, which still blows my mind because that is a lot of work. Because these videos, some days the videos were very, very minimal, but some days my videos were like full-on productions. That's a bit dramatic, but it's true. Like, I put so much work into these videos, and it paid off. I'd gained a lot of followers. Now, most of these followers weren't because of author stuff. At this point, a lot of my followers were just from me posting silly videos, or I used to do a challenge where I used to read books and review them all in the same video. It was a lot of fun, and eventually I loved doing that stuff, but I just knew that writing was where I wanted to be in my life. So I first posted about the book and me getting ready to query agents, and I had an email from an agent at probably the biggest agency in the UK, and I was absolutely floored. I was so excited, and she was just saying, like, when you're ready to query, please consider me. So I was really excited by that. It showed that there was some interest, and of course my platform does come into it, but at the end of the day, the agent needs to like your book to want to sign you. If your book is dog shit, they're not going to take you, unless you're like a celebrity, but I'm not a celebrity. Don't know if you realized. This was probably November time, and I was going to query, like, going to start querying at least very soon after, and then I kind of got scared and I started editing more. I think I did another quick edit, maybe two, I can't remember. It was like a blur of a month, and then I didn't properly start querying until it was the end of December. It was before the new year. I think I was ready before the new year, but I was like, okay, we'll wait for the new year, everyone's back off work and everything like that. So I remember posting a video on a Thursday or Friday saying I'm going to send my first queries ever on the Monday, so in a couple days. And on that Friday, I remember being at work. I used to work at Waterstones, the book retailer. It's like the Barnes & Noble of the UK. And I remember being at the till, checking out customers, and then I get a ping on my Apple Watch, and I look down, and it's an email from Scholastic. Now, Scholastic is a very, very famous publisher, kids publisher, and also teenage YA. And I didn't really at first, until I clocked what the subject was, think much about it, because over my time in the past couple of years on the book internet-y space, I've communicated with Scholastic a lot. A couple of my friends have published with them, and I've been on trips with Scholastic, so I thought maybe it's something like that. So I finally sit down, I think it was on my break, and look through the email, and it was an editor at Scholastic saying that, hey, we've seen your video saying that you're querying soon. Do you mind if we look at your manuscript? And already I had a good feeling, because, I mean, Scholastic has been a really dream publisher for me. They've published some of the greatest books of all time, some of my favourite books of all time. You think The Hunger Games, that series I grew up on. So I was really excited, but again, very hesitant still. So I don't email, oh my gosh, so I don't email right away, and I spend the weekend cleaning up the book as much as I can in a weekend because I don't want to keep them waiting pretty much. So on that Monday morning, I wasn't working, and I sent out my, thinking about it still is crazy. I sent out my email to the editor at Scholastic, which was just really weird, and then I sent some emails to agents as well, all at the same time. It was a very, very weird situation. And in that email, I just said, hey, I can't remember my exact wording, but I just mentioned that a major publisher is also looking at this manuscript, just so they were aware. The agent who'd asked a couple months ago to look at the manuscript, saying, hey, I think they asked what publisher, and then said they'll get back to me ASAP. Eventually that agent didn't want the book, which is fine. It's not for everyone, and she's definitely in a different sort of genre nowadays. I don't think I knew when to expect information or any correspondence back from Scholastic, but it ended up being 5 days later. On the Friday that week, I had an email back from the editor at Scholastic, and she loved the book. Again, I think I was at work this day and was just going crazy because she'd asked to schedule a call with me. So I was kind of freaking out. On my lunch break, I was just calling my mom and my dad. I was like, what's going on? I'm so confused, blah, 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 blah. We scheduled a call. I think it was for the Monday. I can't remember exactly. Eventually, we have the call. They pretty much say, look, we love this book. We think it would fit really well on Scholastic's list, which was just crazy to hear. And the next day, they sent me an offer. Plain and simple. Obviously, I still had queries out, so I sent an email to all those agents and say, look, I've got an offer from a major publisher. And then this is when we kind of hit a brick wall, because all of the agents that I was in correspondence with all pretty much said no. And I ended up querying a couple more, and it got to a point, I can't remember the whole time frame now, but it got to a point where I had no agents and I had this offer. And I think in that situation, I had this offer, this dream offer, and I was like, I can't turn this down. I don't know how long they're going to wait for me. Thinking back now, I should have waited because they're not going to rescind an offer, but I didn't know that at the time. So I ended up getting legal advice. They looked at the offer for me and I took the offer. It was so fast. It was a really, really surreal experience, and I wouldn't recommend it. Agents are a godsend. Literary agent is, I've had two since then. If I could do something differently, I would have waited, because it just would have made my life a lot more easier, but I still it put me in this position today, so I really can't complain anymore. So that deal was finalized in January sometime, January 2024, which is how fast this process has gone. And of course, because it is a thriller, the editing process isn't as substantial as a fantasy book, say, but still, this book was fast-tracked because they wanted it out in October. After I signed this deal, it was a 2-book deal for Let's Split Up and then an untitled second book. It wasn't for a sequel. They wanted something completely different, just like a standalone thriller, and I was fine with that. Let's Split Up finished as a standalone, but because it is like that Scooby formula, there was more room, and I had ideas for what I wanted to do if the time came. But they didn't want it, so I thought, okay, whatever. And then we kind of just fell into editing mode. For the next couple months, it was just edits after edits. To be fair, it wasn't much edit. The story barely changed, but it was just, editing. Okay, so I actually missed a part, so I'm going to insert it here, but around April time, I get my first correspondence from a production company. I'm not going to name these production companies because they weren't, in the end, the ones that ended up getting the rights to Let's Split Up. But I got my first correspondence from a production company, I think it was April time, so a couple months after I signed the deal. And they pretty much just said, hey, this book looks great, can we have the manuscript or blah, 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 blah. And because at the time I didn't have an agent, I forwarded it over to my Scholastic's rights team and everything, and they dealt with that. But this was a big production company, so I was really, really nervous and excited, but also didn't get my hopes up. I just crazily just forwarded the email and said, what's going on? And then also again in, I think it was May, June time, before I signed with my agent, because it was a similar sort of experience, another production company reached out, and this time, this production company, guys, you would know the name. It was a huge production company. They have done some of the biggest YA adaptations ever, and this is all because of, like, at this point, because the hype hadn't built up yet, it was all because of, like, what the story is. It's a hooky story. It's like Scooby-Doo meets Scream. That's attractive, and horror is famously a very cheap genre to make. So again, I forward it to my publisher team. Okay, we'll move on. By June-ish time, I finally got an agent. I was looking for one, and then the stars aligned and I got an agent who I absolutely loved. I'm no longer with her for reasons I don't really need to share, but it was all love. She was incredible. Then we got to July, which was my first ever book event. At this time, the book was set to release for September 26th. Originally, it was like October 7th or something, but they brought it forward a month to coincide with Halloween. It was a great time. September is a very hard time for books, so I was like a bit nervous how it was going to fare, you know. I can't remember if it was mid or end July I had my first ever book event. Scholastic had managed to get me on a panel at Bookfest, which is like this really big book festival that they do in the UK, in the biggest Waterstones in Europe, which is Piccadilly. They do like, it's like one day thing, and it's like panels and books and publishers there. It's it's a really good time, and I managed to get on this like thriller panel with some incredible authors, and that was my first taste, I guess, of the industry. And I got to sign things for the first time. It was just like the signed book plates because the book wasn't printed yet, but it was still a great time. It gave me my first taste of this industry, and I got to meet readers, which was just amazing. I got to sit with one of my friends who's also published by Scholastic, and it was just a really nice experience. Also on that day, and this is where kind of the tides changed, because at this point my book was an elite title. It was just there. I wasn't getting super duper promotion, but they were doing their best. I also want to say as well that Scholastic UK is a lot smaller of a publisher than Scholastic US. The budgets aren't as big. It's just the market is a lot smaller, so I knew the promotion wasn't going to be crazy, you know. But on that same day as Bookfest, I had a meeting, and that's when everything kind of changed, because I found out that the Works wanted to do a special edition of the book. Now, if you don't know, the Works is a UK franchise corporation, whatever. They used to kind of only just specialize in kind of like the mass market paperbacks where you could get books for like £3 for £5. The prices have changed a lot since then, but it was that, and then stationery. Like, I remember going in there as a kid and getting like a pack of pens and a book for like £1.50. It was like the bargain place to go. But in the past year, they've really kind of rebranded, and while they still do all that sort of stuff, they've really gotten into like the sprayed edges of it all, and they're doing a really good job with it. And my book was kind of one of the first for them to kind of blow up, which was wild. At the similar time as well, I found out that I was going to have a really cool launch at the Ritzy Cinema in Brixton, which is in London if you didn't know, but it's an old cinema, and we were going to do a signing, a talk with my friend Andy Darcy-Theo, who's a YA fantasy author, and then there was going to be a screening of I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is another inspiration for the book. We wanted to do Scream, but Scream's an 18, and because Scholastic's a kids publisher, we weren't really logistically allowed to do that. Which is fine, because I Know What You Did Last Summer is still a huge inspiration for me. So when I found out that was happening, I was like, this is really cool. Like, a lot of the launches that I see just happen at bookshops, which I was totally fine with happening, but this was like a step ahead, and I was like, this is really cool. And I have the best publicist ever. I couldn't ask for a better publicist. She is just incredible. Tina, if you're watching, you're a godsend. She won the Publicist YA Campaign of the Year at the Publicity Awards. So deserved. So all through this, she was managing to get me some really cool spots, interviews, podcast. I had a spot in SFX magazine, the Agatha All Along edition, which was really cool. I have it somewhere. And then we also booked Comic-Con on a panel, which was really cool, and we'll get to that. But let's skip to book release, because not much happened between July and then. But book release 26th of September, I was in London the day before to go around London and sign stock at the bookshops. We first started off at Westfield, which is a huge shopping centre in London. I went to the Waterstones there, which isn't the biggest Waterstones, but we then went to the Works, and that's when it kind of hit me. I filmed a bunch of content there. We did some skits, and then I saw how many copies I had to sign. The book just instantly, as I came in, I saw it on the shelf, it just kind of hit hit. The cover is really, really striking. The text is bold, and then the sprayed edge that they ended up doing is stunning. It looks just great, and that's kind of when things started to change, because the book started blowing up on social media. I saw people posting about it because the works kind of float things into shelves a couple days before, so I started seeing a sort of hype build up. The works also at the time, I don't know if they're doing it a bit differently anymore, but they don't post about their editions, their sprayed edge editions, until like a week before release. So when they did announce it, I saw some sort of traction. I saw the really good response, but you couldn't even pre-order it yet. It's kind of just like, it will be on the site at this time and then in shops when you see it. So then I started seeing people post about it and find it in the shops, and then I was getting messages from people from my old school who I've not spoken to in like 5-6 years saying, oh my gosh, is this your book? And they're sending me pictures from like a bunch of Facebook bookish groups with thousands of members of people saying, I just got this, it's amazing, look how cool it is. And it was really weird because it really quickly, within the first day, became like a witch hunt to try and find one. It was still crazy to think of. It got to a point that within 3 days we sold out. You could not find the book anywhere, and then because you couldn't find it anywhere, people were then going to buy the standard edition, and then that sold out, and within 3 days we went on to a second print run. It was that fast. But oops, I skipped over, on the actual release date we had the launch at the Ritzy, which was just amazing. It was a movie. That night was a movie, if you will. I'm so stupid. It was amazing. I signed so many books. I met so many people. It was just a packed night, and it was a great, great launch. The next couple weeks then was just trying to keep up with the demand of everything. I had a couple more events scheduled, signings. I went to stores to sign their copies, and it was great. Booksellers are so lovely. Being a former bookseller myself, I knew they were lovely. We love when an author comes into store. I had the Comic-Con in October, which went really well. We got to the signing line afterwards, and my signing line was the biggest. It was so strange because my book had only been out for a month and I was very overwhelmed. We get to November, December time, and I find out that another production company is excited to look at the book, and things happen, and we pretty much by December find out that Scholastic Entertainment want to buy the rights. My agent had some queries about stuff, so it didn't end up anything happening until January, and at the same time I actually lose my agent, but by January I get a new agent. It's a big ordeal, but I had to go pretty much in the query trenches for the first time properly, and find a new agent, which obviously is a lot easier when you've got sales under your belt, but still you want an agent that's going to champion you, who really enjoys your books. And my current agent, I queried her, and she read my book within it was like a day or two, and I'd also sent her over some other things I'd written, and she'd read it all by the time I spoke to her. I just knew she was instantly right. I was in contact with some huge agents, and I don't know, my current agent, she just felt right. She's just on the same page as me, and I ended up signing with her in January. And no joke, within a week, the TV deal went through. So yeah, Scholastic Entertainment have the rights to Let's Split Up, and it's currently in development for a live-action television series, which is still absolutely wild to say. Obviously, Scholastic are behind Goosebumps. They're behind so many iconic everything. So I'm just so proud of myself, honestly, and just privileged again to be in this position. Oh my gosh, I forgot another thing, so I'm just going to add it here. But in October, we pretty much found out Scholastic, my publisher, wanted a sequel because the book had done so well. So I was like very excited, but also very nervous because I'd already started writing another thriller. But pretty much we announced that there's going to be a sequel to Let's Split Up, and it kind of puts another oomph in the Let's Split Up pipeline. Like, people are excited because they love these characters, and so am I. And because I had all these ideas still for a sequel, I was happy to do a sequel, if that makes sense. And then very soon after, my publisher says, hey, we want to buy more books. And they'd initially floated the idea around December, but I was nervous because I didn't really know what I wanted to do next. Hello, it's Editing Me. I am just re-recording this tiny little bit because I realised I said something that I'm not allowed to say. But pretty much I end up having a conversation with my editor and tell her my thoughts and my worries and blah 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 blah. And we end up deciding on what certain things are going to be, and I end up signing a new 2-book deal with Scholastic. But all at the same time now, I'm writing, actually I've already written an adult fantasy, which is something completely different. It's unsigned at the moment, but it's a lot of fun, and it's a lot different from Let's Split, but also in line. It makes sense as like a carry-on point, if that makes sense. How many times can I say that? And then we announced those in, I think it was, when was it, like end of March, April now? And I didn't know they were announcing the TV deal with that. So when I announced the sequel cover, also on the same day, we were doing like a big reveal day. I find out, I opened the press release and realized that they've announced the TV show too, which was crazy because I wasn't expecting it. I think it was one of those things where at last minute they were like, you know what, let's throw all of our eggs at the wall. Is that a phrase? I don't know. It was Bologna weekend book fair, so I think they just said fuck it. So they ended up announcing everything, and then yeah, the rest is history, man. It was so fast. It was such a wild couple of years. It's not even a couple of years, like a year and a half. That is how fast this experience is. And again, this is not a common experience into the industry. The industry is normally very, very slow. It's wild how slow it can be, but I've not experienced that yet. I'm going to eventually, when I sign more books with other publishers. I'm going to realize how slow the industry, but for me at the moment it is completely different. I should also say, because I forgot to say throughout, but we slowly sold foreign rights throughout the year as well. I think we ended up selling only the one before the release in the UK. I say the only the one because it's still an amazing feat, but a week after it came out in the UK, the US wanted it, and then we ended up selling, I think, 6 more foreign rights deals in the Q4, and then I think we sold 2 more early this year. But yeah, it's been an absolutely wild time. I'm having the best time. I'm very lucky to be able to do this full time, and I'm having a blast. I love my job. I love my life. I don't know, man. I am such in a privileged position that every time I sit down at my desk, I'm like, how is this my life? But I think this video is long enough, so I think I'll just say, if you've read Let's Split Up, thank you so much. If you're waiting for it to come out, I'm so happy, and I can't wait for you to read it. If you are in the US, anywhere you pre-order the book, the first print run is going to have the same sprayed edge that we had in the UK, but on the US cover. So if you want to order it Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, wherever you want, you will get the sprayed edge on the first print run, which is really, really cool. But yeah, my name's Bill Wood. I am on like all the socials if you want to follow me. Just search Bill Wood, my name, or Bill Reads. That's normally my @ on things. If you want to see more of me, I posted a horror author watches Scream the other day, which was really, really fun. I plan on doing a Scooby-Doo one, and then other films if people want me to see them. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and sorry for the long video.